Jerry, look who's here.
Ah, Lloyd.
Hi, Jerry. Got some more of that gum.
Oh, the gum.
Yeah, let's all enjoy a chew, huh?
Oh, boy.
Now, see, this is what the holidays are all about. Three buddies sitting around chewing gum, huh?
But I don't want to be a
secondary character.
Hello, Ivan.
Hello, Stephen.
And hello to you, our listeners. Welcome to another episode of But I Don't Want to Be a Secondary Character. We're a Seinfeld podcast out of Melbourne, Australia, and every week we take a random episode of Seinfeld and examine the secondary characters from it. And this week we're doing I would say, classic episode from season 7, The Gum.
Yeah, episode 10 of that season, and it rounds out the year quite well because this is the last episode that we have reviewed, as well as the characters, where it's actually set at Christmas time. So I was looking everywhere for Christmas episodes that we may not have done, Steve. I was like, oh geez, we've done the Red Dot last year for our Festivus special. We did, a couple others. We did the Strike 2 years before, for our first Festivus special, and we've done other Christmas ones in between. There's about, I think, half a dozen Christmas episodes all up on the show. And I looked and I was like, The Gum, that's the last one that's set around Christmas, and we haven't done it. So that's part of our third and final Festivus special because we are wrapping up the series at the end of the year. At the start of next year,
Yeah, in March next year. Yeah, and there's not a lot to let the viewers know that it is a Christmas episode. There's a couple of references to the holidays and a few other things, but it's not really a Christmas-themed episode. It's just a storyline that happens to be around Christmas.
Yeah, so it actually worked out because I thought, oh no, it'd be weird if we had a Festivus special with no episodes set around that time, but luckily we grabbed that one out of our hats.
Yeah, it worked out very, very well. If you want to talk to us about Christmas, you can email us, peoplebarspodcast@gmail.com. You can say hello on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or Reddit. You can listen to all of our previous episodes on your podcast app of choice. And if you want to rate us or review us, that would be amazing. It really helps us out. And finally, you can support us financially as well.
Yes, with one-off payments on PayPal, or you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/BIDWBASC, and you can donate for $2 or so US a month, and you get bonus podcasts, Curbcast, and Season 11, as well as some other goodies, including this episode earlier than everyone else. So you got an early Christmas present if you sign up.
That's right. And we also run the biggest Seinfeld group, Seinfeld community, I should say, on the internet. It's a Facebook group called Seinfeldisms. Check it out. We're about 102,000 members. Lots of awesome, fun Seinfeld stuff going on, and lots of cool things coming up in the new year. So check it out.
Indeed. Anyway, Stephen, speaking of Seinfeld-isms, do you have any Christmas or Festivus-related isms that have happened to you these days or in the last week or so?
No Festivus or Christmas Seinfeldisms, but a couple of pretty standard ones at this point. I was watching Family Guy through the week and they happened to mention Seinfeld. Can't recall which episode, but I did make a mental note. And another one is that I was listening to a podcast. Again, didn't write down which one, but just made a mental note that some podcast somewhere at some point referred to Seinfeld. What about you?
Same as you. So I listened to a podcast the other week and they mentioned Seinfeld. I forgot the context. I forgot the name, just like you. And they mentioned Seinfeld. So I think it was just in passing somehow. Oh, actually, it might have been the Weekly Planet, I think, the pop culture podcast. I think they mentioned Seinfeld in something because I mentioned the Weekly Planet, I think, a month ago, and they were talking about the worst series finales, and Seinfeld, popped up. But yeah, for some reason they talked about Seinfeld in some context, and that was it. It was a couple of seconds.
Yeah,
Forgot
Seinfeld,
which episode it was.
Yeah, Seinfeld is commonly referred to. So it's if you watch enough TV or listen to enough podcasts in a week, there's a good chance you'll hear some sort of reference to Seinfeld. As we've just demonstrated. Seinfeld news for the week. Bit of a slim news week like last week, but I did manage to find a couple of Seinfeld-related news pieces, not specifically to do with Seinfeld. The first one being a second article. It was put out by the LA Times, and that was with Cazzie David, Larry David's daughter. So we mentioned a couple of weeks ago that she's putting out a book next year. It's called No One Asked for This, and it's basically a series of essays and stories, I guess, anecdotes of her life up until this point, and it's written in the style of Larry David. So quite weird, probably quite cynical. We did talk about the first essay that was mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and it was called Too Full to Fuck, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And it's about how she would go on dates, and she'd always feel anxious about eating too much because she loves food, but she didn't want to eat so much that she couldn't have sex with her date, so it was always a bit of a choice she had to make. This one, the article in the LA Times I mentioned, Cazzie talks about her breakup with comedian Pete Davidson, who was actually quite unknown before they started going out, and then her being his girlfriend kind of raised his profile, and then he went out with Ariana Grande, and that just sort of exploded his profile. Anyway, he broke up with her basically to be with Ariana Grande. She took it pretty hard, and in the article she talks about how she flew to a sister's graduation after the breakup, and Larry was there obviously, and being a fresh breakup, she was pretty upset, and Larry was comforting her for the trip, and at the end of the trip, he basically just told her to snap out of it and get over it, basically. So he was comforting to a certain point, and then the typical kind of asshole Larry David that we see in Curb Your Enthusiasm kicked in and just told her to cut it out. So there you go.
Goodness. Full on. Anyway, a bit of gossip, a bit of TMZ.
Yeah, I guess so. It's sort of celebrity-ish. It's more about how Larry David, comforted or didn't comfort his daughter more so than the breakup. But I think when we talked about, just a side point, when we talked about that article a couple of weeks ago, the Too Full to Fuck essay, first I was like a bit, I don't think I'd be interested in this book. But the more I hear about it, this article and the first article, I think I'll, at least give it a read, or maybe if there's like a teaser copy or something, or an audiobook that's a couple of bucks, I'd actually give it a listen. It might be worthwhile.
Yeah, well, you might get something out of it, because like with Cassie, she reminds me of like, she's definitely like her father, but it'd be like if Larry David was like in her mid-20s and, and a woman, that'd be like Larry David.
Yeah, it's like millennial Larry David, a young Larry David dealing with modern day problems, but still with the sort of attitude of Larry David, which is, of another time in a lot of ways. So
yeah, I'm sure there's something like that. Well, that'd be awesome if like Cassie one day, wanted to get more into acting, and then like say her dad got really old or passed, and then they did like a reboot of Curb, and then Cassie was like Larry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of any sort of cynical asshole character. It's kind of my go-to. So yeah, but there aren't many characters that are women that are like that, so I think it'd be a nice take.
Yeah, it would be a good take, and she'd be just like her dad, but like a semi-fictionalized version of Cazzie in real life.
Yeah. So,
fun.
Yeah, obviously some more news will come out about the book. I think it comes out in February or March next year. But if any other articles come out or any other interviews that talk about what's going to be in the book, I'll mention it on Seinfeld News. Second bit of news for the week, and it would be pretty cool if it does actually happen. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, a little while ago, it actually happened about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but I did miss it. And picking it up this week, she spoke to a publication called The New Abnormal. I believe they're like a pop culture website. They're a podcast from the Daily Beast, which is a pretty well-known podcast network.
Yep.
She talked about, I didn't catch the host of the podcast, but with that host, she talked about Veep, and obviously how a lot of it coincidentally plays into real life politics, especially the last 4 years in America. And the show ended last year in late 2019. But she did actually talk about the possibility of a reboot already. So a lot of the creators and writers and JLD have thrown around the idea. They haven't really given any concrete details. It's more just sort of considering it. But she said the fact that Trump will no longer be the president and Biden, as she said, will return America to some sort of normality may offer a chance, because she doesn't feel like that the fictional representation of politics, she'll be able to take the piss out of normal politics, when reality is more crazy than satire. It's sort of it defeats the purpose in a way. So hopefully that does happen, because Veep,
fingers crossed.
Yeah, Veep is awesome, but that's probably the quickest turnaround for a reboot in TV history if it does happen.
I'd probably say so. For sure.
Yeah, and that's all the Seinfeld news for the week.
Very good, mate. We are recording remotely today, as you can probably tell from the recording, but we're having a good time at the moment, and we'll have an excellent time. We're going to chew some gum together over our app that we use to record, and when we come back, we're talking about some secondary characters today. We're going to focus a bit more on Lloyd Braun, because Matt McCoy, who we have interviewed in the past, he makes his debut on the show as Matt McCoy, and I've got other notes on some other secondary characters, Mr. Haarwood, as well as Deena, and a few others. Actually, there's a few here.
Yeah, lots to talk about.
Indeed. We'll be back.
Hello, folks. Matt McCoy here, a.k.a. Lloyd Braun from Seinfeld. And I'm telling you right now, I do not want to be a secondary character.
The Gum first aired in the US on December 14th, 1995, directed by Andy Ackerman and written by Tom Gamble and Max Pross. In this Season 7 episode, when Lloyd Braun, Matt McCoy, comes back from the psychiatric hospital, Kramer takes him under his wing and convinces Jerry to buy gum from him and wear glasses that don't belong to him to prove that Lloyd isn't crazy. George tries to prove to his old neighbor Deena, Mary Jo Keenan, that he isn't crazy after a cashier shortchanges him. Ruthie Cohen, played by by Ruth Cohen, and she's credited as cashier for the episode. And it's actually a funny thing, Steve, because Ruth Cohen, she's been in like 101 episodes of the show out of 180, and this is the first and only time she's been credited for the appearance.
Yeah, and just a bit of trivia about her. Have you finished the synopsis?
Yeah, it's actually a really short one. Yep, it's all done.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's get into the trivia. And the first bit of trivia I did actually mention was that Ruthie Cohen, and I didn't realize this, was never actually a trained actress. She was always just considered an extra. So even though she's only got, 2 or 3 scenes in this and she doesn't say much at all, it's always just, 2, 3, 4, 5 word sentences. Apparently there were lots of takes and there's lots of outtakes that you can see on YouTube actually because she was really, really nervous. Even though she'd been on sets for years and years and years and years and years, she was just always a background or an extra, so she never actually spoke. So when she was asked to, she was actually quite nervous. So yeah, lots of good outtakes on YouTube, actually.
Yeah, it's fab. And I find it unbelievable that she's been in so many episodes. And like I mentioned, this is the only one that she's been credited for. She's been uncredited for the other 100. I find it unbelievable.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know whoever made that decision or if they were just like, well, we kind of need constant background stuff to make, background characters to make it a bit more realistic. Don't know. But yeah, worked out well.
And they decided to give Ruth a go on this episode and give her some dialogue.
Yeah, she paid her dues,
Oh, she did. Yeah, she did well. She did well.
At this point, she was probably in like 70-ish odd episodes. You're about 2/3 of the way through the series, so they're probably like, you know what, this extra that's been there most of the time, let's give her a few lines.
Yeah, she's been there since season 4. She was in The Trip, part 1, the season 4 debut. That was her first episode.
Oh, yes, there you go. So she wasn't even in the first 3 seasons. So she was nearly in, probably in 80 or 90% of episodes after season 4.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, but she didn't really have much part in the episode.
No, but it's still impressive for an extra.
Absolutely. And speaking of extras or more prominent extras, Larry David, he guest starred uncredited as well. He was the newsstand owner who refuses to take George's $20 note with the lipstick on it. And it's his final appearance on camera on the show. But however, his voice would feature in later episodes, particularly how he was the voice of George Steinbrenner.
Yeah, it's a really strange choice for Larry David to be cast in this role. Like the only other physical role I can remember is, I can't remember the character's name or if he has a name, but Frank Costanza's mate with the cape.
Yeah.
And he plays like an eccentric weirdo. So I understand why you go, you know what, I'm going to play this role because this guy's a bit of a Fruit Loop. But this guy's just so normal and he's, he has a cigar and he's got a newsstand and he just tells George to take his 20 elsewhere. I don't know, it was like a last minute decision or, it was a strange choice that Larry chose to act in such a sort of inconsequential and unimportant role.
Yeah, well, I think like what we've hypothesized like many moons ago, it's probably a situation where they just needed someone for like a line, like 30 seconds. And then they were like, you know what, Larry's not doing anything, just jump in. And he's like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, one of those situations. Yeah, I think he was more hands off in season 7. Like he still had a part in the show. So he was like, you know what, there's like just a 20, 30 second bit. I'll jump in there. It's fine.
Yeah, true. The last bit of trivia I have, and I didn't even realize it, but it's so true, that, George throughout most of the episode is trying to get a $20 bill back. But if you think about it, because he claims that Ruthie stole a $20 bill from him and she only gave him change for a 10, really he should only be after a $10 note, not a $20 note, because, he's already got...
Yeah, he does. He's trying to, if anything, he's trying to fleece Ruthie for $10 more.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, you don't realize as you're watching the episode, but when someone points it out to you, it's, it makes sense. You're like, oh, hang on. He shouldn't be after 20. He should be after 10.
Yeah. He's just trying to cheat Ruthie out of $10 more, which he would so do.
Classic George.
Yeah, indeed. And the final trivia bit that I have is when Jerry is wearing the glasses, the really, like the bottle spectacles, the bottle cap spectacles, the massive ones, the Coke bottle spectacles. Yeah. He sees a blurry image of Elaine, but we think that it's just Elaine, looking at Jerry, and Jerry doesn't know who that is. It's just like the silhouette. It turns out that it's actually JLD laughing at Jerry, like actually like laughing out of character. So if you look really closely, it looks like she's kind of moving down, and she's actually laughing.
I listened to the Signcast episode today for this episode, and they made the point of what was Elaine laughing at, because the shot of a blurry Elaine would just be a camera. It wouldn't be Jerry's eyes. So Jerry must have been doing something off to the side while she was to make her laugh, because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
Yeah, because it wasn't Elaine laughing, it was JLD. So clearly something was happening behind the scenes.
She wouldn't be, normally when they laugh, they're laughing at, their fellow actors for fucking up a line or doing something funny or saying something funny.
Yeah.
But she was just in front of a blurry camera. So someone off screen must have been making a face, or maybe Jerry was just staring at her with the glasses and that made her laugh. But
he does look pretty good in them. He does look pretty funny.
yeah, that's one of the classic visuals of just Jerry with the big dorky glasses on.
Yeah, so good. And we've seen JLD in so many outtakes laughing. It probably takes like 20, 30 takes to get a scene. She has such a good time.
Yeah, she seems to have a lot of fun. I mean, we praise her all the time for just being an amazing person, but she just seems to have this really positive spirit. I'm sure she would be a lot of fun to work with and just, really infectious.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, do you have any other trivia or that's it?
No, that's it.
Cool. Let's talk about some secondary characters from the Gum. We have already talked about Lloyd Braun in his own What's the Deal With episode, but I feel like we haven't really spoken about him for a long time. So maybe we can do like a bit of a refresher and then we can talk about him in the context of the episode. How does that sound?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because I think that this episode is probably the most consequential in terms of his character arc. We see him just after a mental breakdown, and then him trying to just sort of be normal but not doing it so well in this episode.
Yeah. And actually, now I think about it, we haven't done the Serenity Now, which he's in again, Matt, and we haven't done the Non-Fat Yogurt where the other actor, Peter Callahan, was in. So actually, this is the first standalone episode we've done where Lloyd's in it. Would you believe it?
Yeah, true.
There you go.
The time we talked about him is when we did his own What's the Deal. So that was a long time ago.
That was our first year. That was like our first few months.
That was 2017. So yeah, long time. If you want to hear what is probably an awkward and amateur take on Lloyd Braun, go way back and listen to that. But we'll give a redo now.
And we also, indeed. And we also interviewed Matt McCoy as well, which was a fun one. So check that out. We interviewed him around the time that episode came out. So check that out too. But anyway, he was played Lloyd Braun in this episode by Matt McCoy. He's appeared in the films The Hand That Rocks the Cradle and the TV shows Jack Ryan and Silicon Valley. This is the first of 2 appearances on the show from Matt, the other one being the Serenity Now from season 9, which we have yet to do. However, this is the second of 3 times in the series that Lloyd has appeared on the show. As I mentioned before, Lloyd Braun makes his debut in the Non-Fat Yogurt, but he was played by another actor, Peter Callahan. And like I said, check out the What's the Deal with Lloyd, as well as Matt's interview where we talked to him about his time on the show and what he was doing at the time. He was actually filming Jack Ryan at the time we recorded.
Yeah, he was in Morocco, I think, Tangier.
Yeah, Morocco. Yep.
Yeah, and it's funny because the next year I really like Jack Ryan and I watched the series the year after and I'm like, there he is.
There he is. He plays a hostage, I think he said, yeah? Like a scientist who's caught hostage or taken hostage?
I think he's a missionary.
A missionary, yep.
They filmed it in Morocco, but it's set in, I think, Iraq or Iran, somewhere else, like somewhere where there's a war, Afghanistan maybe.
Yeah. Cool. It's funny how we talked about it then and, you watch the show a year later and it's like, oh yeah, cool. That's where he was. It's fun.
Yeah, it's funny to think that, because I think he said he was in the middle of filming or, it was at some point during the filming and it was like an 8-week shoot for him. It's funny you watch the series and you're like, you don't know which day that we talked to him on, but, you could have talked to him an hour before footage that made it to the actual series was in. It's a strange sort of messes with your head a bit.
Yeah, it does. Really cool. But anyway, Lloyd Braun, he has fallen from grace since the Non-Fat Yogurt. He was the advisor to the Mayor Dinkins campaign at the time, and unfortunately, due to Elaine's name tag suggestion, he put that to Dinkins, and Dinkins lost the election. That was the reason, and Lloyd had a nervous breakdown and went to a psychiatric hospital. I feel like that Kramer, because Kramer thinks that, Lloyd's part of, the mayor's office as well for the current mayor, who I assume was Giuliani, wasn't it, at the time?
Yeah, this was only a couple of years after Dinkins lost. This was season 7.
Yeah.
It was 5. So, yeah, Giuliani would have been still in his first term.
Yeah, sure. So, Kramer thinks that, he's part of Giuliani's office. He's like an advisor. But I feel like that he's not actually in it. I feel like he's just, he's recovered from his nervous breakdown, but I don't think he's quite mentally fit enough to go back to work. I just feel like he's probably delusional and he thinks that he's working for the mayor's office and Kramer believes him.
Yeah, I never got the impression that he was still actually working for the mayor's office because Kramer says he uses mayoral connections. I just thought that, he's not working for the mayor, but, it's only a couple of years since he did work for the mayor, so he'd still know some people, in City Hall or wherever the mayor works. So he'd still have some connections, but he doesn't have a direct line to the mayor.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry, you're right. Yeah, no, he had mayoral connections, but I feel like he's probably, after his breakdown, he's just severed all the ties for the mayoral connections. So I feel like he probably doesn't speak to people.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm sure Lloyd would like to be on friendly terms with whoever's there that he knew before Dinkins lost. But, it's unfortunate to say that I reckon it would be more a case of anyone in the mayoral office would cut ties with him. We don't want to be seen with that crazy guy. He's an embarrassment, something like that. Which probably adds to the pain of, his mental breakdown.
Yeah, it would. He's gone through a lot, Lloyd.
Yeah. And you can tell in this episode he's really trying hard to sort of be normal, but it feels like it feels rehearsed. He's cocky, he's awkward, he makes everyone a bit uncomfortable. He doesn't even understand social cues, especially with the gum. But the non-fat yogurt, he's like smooth. He's a smooth operator. He's got to be. He's working for the mayor, so he's got to be slick. So his idea of how to be a person has just completely gone out the window.
Shattered. Gone out the window. Yeah.
And you can tell that it's very fragile because anytime anyone says the word insane or crazy or anything around him, you can tell it triggers him. He's like, hang on, am I crazy?
Yeah.
So it's walking a very fine line between just acting normal, faking it until you make it almost, and slipping back into a pretty bleak mental state, I think.
Yeah, he's definitely he's probably gone more the way of not recovering too well mentally and still in that state.
Yeah, I think it's gotten to a point where he can function on some level in normal society. He's not going to lose his mind or he's not going to put anyone's safety at risk or his own safety, but it's not a full recovery. He's just sort of and maybe his psychiatrist or whoever was looking after him at the facility, maybe they realize that look, he needs to start to reintegrate back into society to help his recovery, even though it's going to be awkward and clunky, which you can clearly see in this episode. That's sometimes you've got to just jump in rather than fully recover and then come back in.
It takes a bit of time to get back into it.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, how awkward he is in this episode is sort of comedic from our point of view. But speaking as someone who's had, what was more or less a mental breakdown, it's and struggling to sort of feel normal again and just act normal around people without overthinking it and being paranoid about, oh my God, everyone thinks I'm mental. There was a bit of for me personally, and a lot of other people can relate as well. There was a bit of empathy there. I thought, I felt really sorry for him because he's a nice man, but he's just not doing so well, And unfortunately, other than Kramer, the people who he's spending time with in this episode, frankly, don't give a shit about him because they're not the sort of people who do. And Kramer, I mean, I don't know if Kramer's genuinely trying to take him under his wing, as he says, or if he's just pretending to be his friend for that mayoral connection to get the cinema certified as a, I can't remember the exact term, but, like certified as like a vintage building or, whatever it is.
I think it's more towards trying to get that mayoral or that special status, but he's also probably feeling for Lloyd as well, because we have mentioned many times that Kramer is probably the most empathetic of the four, and, he does genuinely care about people. So I feel like he understands that Lloyd's gone through a lot and he wants to try and help him, but I think the majority or his MO is getting that status.
Yeah, I don't think it's completely transparent or, I don't think he's being completely false in his motivation, but, it is mixed in with that self-serving desire to get the cinema certified. Yeah, I mean, I could imagine that, if Lloyd Braun didn't have any mayoral connections, if he didn't have that in his past and Kramer, ran into him. However, you don't really know how he comes into Kramer's life. Maybe runs into him or, he just hears through the grapevine or something. I still think Kramer would have helped him out, but maybe not to the extent in this episode because he's basically with Kramer the whole time.
Yeah.
He's like he reminds me almost of, I can't remember the guy's name. Is it Darren in Kramer?
Oh, Darren in the voice that we did a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
It almost, he follows Kramer around like a puppy dog.
Yeah, he's like a puppy dog. He's dependent on Kramer because Kramer's the only one who's giving him a chance.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Kramer kind of patronizes him a bit and, unfortunately kind of does him a disservice by protecting him too much, especially like, when he orders the hot dog and the guy goes, are you crazy? Like, what?
It's been here since the silent era.
Yeah. And he goes, it's a perfectly sane food to eat. And the fact that he eats the hot dog just to prove to him that it's a normal hot dog and that he's not insane is just way over the top and totally inappropriate. It's like you don't he's fragile, sure, but you don't need to, eat his food for him.
But he had a good, his heart was in the right place for it.
Yeah. Kramer always has good motivations, but he's very bad at judging social norms and other people's sort of comfort zones. He always steps over that line. So, this is just another case of that. But yeah, I feel really sorry for Lloyd. You can tell that he really wants to befriend Jerry, and that he thinks that the gum is a way to become his friend. But, even Jerry's not a nice person and he has no interest in being his friend, gum or no gum. But if I were Jerry and I wasn't an asshole, but I was still Jerry in this situation, persistently offering to buy me gum would be very awkward. And I think Jerry goes along with it very, I don't know, like credit to Jerry. We criticize Jerry for being a bit of an asshole all the time, and he is. But credit to Jerry for sort of playing along, just to sort of make him feel a bit more sane.
Yeah, to make him feel a bit better. I mean, with the gum. And I was going to go to the gum because I was thinking, why would Lloyd like gum so much? But I feel like with the gum, he probably thinks because as I mentioned before that I feel like Kramer thinks that Lloyd he's still part of the hustle, like he can still get done, like things done, like connections for this and that and stuff. But I feel like Lloyd, he's kind of missing, like I don't think he has the abilities like he did in the past when he was with Dinkins. And I think the best thing he can do is just get gum from like some Chinese shop in Chinatown, you know what I mean? That's like the best thing he can do, and he feels like he's got skin in the game.
Yeah, I think as you were saying that it rings a really vague bell. I think we did talk about that's why he was really interested in hooking up whoever with the gum, because it was, it was his current version of being like, the man with the connections. Like I can hook you up with a good restaurant seat or like floor tickets at a Knicks game, or, I've got those connections. And the best he can do is just, like you said, is a box of gum, at probably a slightly cheaper than retail price because he's kind of friendly with the Chinese shopkeeper.
Yeah, that's the best he can do. And like I'm echoing what you said, I feel really sorry for him too in this episode. Lloyd's really gone down, a bad path. And Jerry makes a good point because George says, my mum always said that I should be like Lloyd Braun. And then Jerry says now that Lloyd Braun is more like you to George. That line kind of makes sense.
Sort of poetically just.
Yeah, he's become like a loser like George.
Yeah, basically. I mean, one mark against Lloyd is that he is a bit creepy towards Elaine, but, to his credit, if you're in this sort of state where you don't really understand social cues, it is harder for him to understand and respect boundaries and not understand that, Elaine having a wet shirt and cleavage is not her flirting with him.
Yeah, well.
He just can't read or understand social cues.
No, he can't. And, you hope that, Lloyd's, come around and he's become, his old self, but in the Serenity Now, he goes off the rails. He pretends to make sales for computers, but the phone isn't even plugged in.
Yeah, he obviously his recovery is not linear. Maybe between the gum and the Serenity Now, he had a few periods where he was a bit more well adjusted, and then it's a back and forth. The path to recovery is never a straight one. So
no, it's not. But well, when we do the Serenity Now, eventually we'll delve into that aspect of Lloyd in that time.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have anything else about it?
No, but like I said, you can go back and we do a full episode just on Lloyd Braun. What's the deal with Lloyd Braun? I think it's episode 14 or 15, I think. So go back there and check it out when we were young and, young podcasters, young amateurs.
Yeah, green around the gills.
Green around the gills.
All right, let's talk about Deena Lazarri.
Yes, she's played by Mary Joan Keenan. Joe Keenan, sorry. She's known for Nothing to Lose and Thumbtanic. Must be a thumb puppet rendition of Titanic. I got no idea. I saw that on IMDb and I'm like, okay, that sounds really weird.
Yeah, sounds odd.
I love you, Thumb Jack. I love you, Thumb Rose. Yeah, and then Celine Dion plays in the background.
Instead of a handprint on the window, it's just a thumbprint,
Thumbprint.
Making love on the misty window.
Yes. Pinky fingers and ring fingers only on the boats. Thumbs have to stay behind. But yes, anyway.
Jack is it Dawn? What's her name? Dawn? No.
Rose. Yeah.
Jack gives Rose the thumbs up when he's drowning in the ice when she's
yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger style from Terminator 2. The thumbs up. Finger paint me like one of your girls. Like one of your French girls. Anyway, Deena Lazarri, she was George's neighbour growing up, and they've obviously known each other since childhood. She's taken time off work to look after her father, Pop, who we'll talk about soon, and because Pop had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, and as she said, she has become more sensitive to the signs of people starting to have or going through a nervous breakdown. And at first I thought, well, it's very nice that even though she is misguided, in this episode, and she makes the wrong assumptions about George. It's kind of like Kramer, where the motivation is nice. It's a good thing. She wants George to be okay, and she wants to step in and make sure that he's got help if he needs it and whatever. But the fact that she kind of assumes, and then George has to prove her wrong, rather than the other way around. Like, fair enough that she suspects that maybe George is going through something, but rather than just assume and then having to be proven incorrect and not letting go of that assumption is kind of presumptuous and rude. I'd be very, very bothered if someone said to me, look, I'm concerned about your mental health, I'd be very flattered. But if they told me, and I knew that I wasn't going through a mental breakdown, but if they were insistent and then I had to spend the next however long to convince them that I'm not, that would actually drive me crazy, which, like Kramer, her motivation is good. She's just looking out for someone in her life, but she sort of goes about it in this very presumptuous, stepping over the line way, I think.
Yeah, she does. I mean, because George in this episode, he's just a victim of circumstance. I mean, it makes to Deena, it looks like that George is indeed crazy, but George is just, a victim of unfortunate events.
Yeah, and I think you have to give people, the benefit of the doubt in these circumstances. Again, like if I was in her situation and I saw someone who I thought maybe was struggling, I'd ask if they were. I wouldn't assume they were and then expect them to prove me wrong. I'd broach the question in a bit more of a subtle, respectful way, not just go, well, you're obviously going through a breakdown and you have to convince me you're not. Yeah,
she definitely can't really read the room, can she? I mean, she just kind of goes, because she kind of just goes straight for it. She's like, oh, George, you must be having a nervous breakdown like my father, which isn't necessarily true. I mean, George is, insane and, depressed and everything in his own right, but she kind of goes a bit overboard.
George is a very, very damaged human being. So she's probably reading a bit of that as well, just his general mental illness and maladjustedness. But yeah, I think she just she assumes incorrectly, and she's just not intentionally rude, but just, a bit over-assumptive and presumptuous. So, but I mean, to her credit, given all the circumstances that happen to George, the series of unfortunate coincidences that befall George in a very short amount of time, that always involve either Ruthie, a $20 bill, or Lloyd Braun. I can understand why she would go, George is trying to tell me he's not crazy, but everything goes back to either Lloyd Braun or Ruthie or a Bill.
Oh, Ruthie, yeah.
I can understand why she feels justified in her assumption, but I just don't think it's right.
No, and I feel like she's probably one of the only people on the show who genuinely cares for him, who cares for George. Like, not even his parents care for him. And I feel like she's trying everything to try and get George right, but then when she sees him in the Henry VIII suit, she probably thinks George, like, to her, in her eyes, she probably thinks that George is just so far gone that he can't be saved. That's why she runs off.
Yeah, I was going to say, she makes time to see George. She says to him, you're probably wondering why we're seeing each other again. And George, funnily enough, thinks that she's interested in him romantically. He's always like, well, it's understandable. And then she starts talking about, signs of a mental breakdown. And he's like, what are you talking about? He has no idea. He thinks he's interested in him, which is classic George. But yeah, it gets, at first she's concerned and she makes time to see him and to try and help him. But when she sees him in the Henry VIII costume, her concern turns to fear.
Yeah, to fear. And that's why she runs away, because she's given him every chance, to try and make himself, get better and stuff. And she probably thinks, wow, George is really far gone, like more than I expected.
Yeah. And some of George's, again, series of unfortunate circumstances, I do for George in this episode. He seems to cop more shit than I guess he deserves. But, if I were her and I saw all those things, he does that quite aggressively. He chases after the horse, his car's on fire. He is a bit unstable from her point of view. So I can understand why she goes from concern to fear.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, she's extremely concerned.
Yeah, and then the Henry VIII costume is just sort of the final straw.
The final straw, yeah, that's it. That just breaks the camel's back.
I think so. What I don't get, and it's a bit of a goof, I guess, is when he's trying to convince her that he's not crazy, and he sees Jerry in the car. Jerry obviously hears George, and George says, "Hey, Jerry, it's me, George." And George has a distinctive voice, and how many people in Jerry's life would he know that a name's George? Fair, he can't see him, but he doesn't even respond verbally. To me, it was like a bit of a, that was the joke, that he didn't see him or acknowledge him. But in real life, he would have at least recognized his voice.
Well, to be fair, the window was up, so maybe Jerry could hear like muffled words. Okay. So I'll probably give him benefit down.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else about Deena?
No, but I think you made really good points. I mean, she just kind of assumes that George is mentally ill, even though, well, he's got his issues, but he's not suffering from a nervous breakdown. And I feel like I appreciate that there's a character who genuinely cares for George. It doesn't happen often.
Yeah, it is nice, but her concern has limits. She just is not a fan of Victorian costumes.
No, doesn't like that era.
No, not at all.
No. I reckon we should talk about, this is the first time we're going to do this, but I think we should talk about Ruthie Cohen. What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, we were thinking of doing like a What's the Deal with Ruthie Cohen, like probably a year or two ago, but then we never got round to it. And, she's appeared in pretty much every episode we've done so far. And, we thought, well, this is the episode where she's credited and she has an impact on the episode. And I thought, why not? Let's talk about Ruthie.
Yeah, of course. That's what we do.
All right. So she's played by Ruth Cohen. She's appeared in Seinfeld more times than any other secondary character. Like I mentioned earlier, she's appeared in 101 episodes as as the monk's cashier, often in non-speaking roles. Her first episode was in The Trip Part 1, the season 4 premiere, and her last appearance was in the finale, but she was uncredited in that episode. This, like I mentioned, is her only credited appearance on Seinfeld. Ruth, she passed away in 2008 in Panorama City, California, and she was aged 78. So I feel like, Steve, that she, because I said she had a huge part in the episode and she certainly deserves to be talked about. I think she rides a horse in Central Park. So I assume she likes riding horses. She probably has like a stable, or she goes to a stable and, rides horses. She must have an affinity for them.
Yeah, maybe she grew up with horses. Maybe her family, maybe she grew up in a more regional area, where they had horses on a farm or something.
Yeah.
And her moving to the city, obviously having horses is a lot harder in New York City, especially Manhattan. So, any chance she can get to ride a horse, even if it's just sort of a short trip around Central Park, is better than nothing for her.
I'm surprised. Would you need like a permit maybe to ride in Central Park? I don't see too many horses in parks.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, Central Park's pretty liberal in terms of what you can do there, I think, because it's so important to the city's, inhabitants that they have like a natural kind of area. I think the city is pretty like open, as long as you're not causing damage. If you're just cruising around a horse on a path, what's the difference between a horse and a bike or a pedestrian? It's just another being walking, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but I imagine, there would be some extra responsibilities or expectations. Imagine, I'm just thinking of dog walking. You have to take the plastic bags to pick up their shit. You probably have to take a bin bag,
one of those big black garbage bags,
like a bin liner, as opposed to
God,
little thin plastic bags.
Yeah. Actually, my fiance and I, we had a chat about this yesterday because we were buying some stuff online for our dog and we were going to get poop bags. And then there was like 2 options to filter for because on the website we use, there's like options to filter for different animals, like what you need. And we looked at poop bags and one of them was for dogs and the other one was for horses. And we're like, horse poop bags? That must be like freaking huge.
Wow.
But no, but they weren't actually, glad bags, but they weren't actually poop bags. For some reason, there was like some horse products that were incorporated into the poop bags. I don't know, it was weird, but it was nothing to do with poop. So yeah, it's funny. It's just funny how horses was there. And it's like, oh my God, you could probably put a whole human being in one of them.
Yeah. I've seen and I've stood in some horse shit, and it's big.
It's huge. Yeah. Big animals, big majestic creatures, the old horses. She's a really stoic person, she just kind of gets on with her work. She doesn't, embellish on too many things. And even the whole $20 issue, you'd expect, it would have been interesting if Ruthie was really loud, and she argumentative person to George, and she started going nuts, with all these episodes she's been so quiet. It would have been an interesting take if she was a really angry person, telling George to piss off and stuff and don't worry about it. But the fact she's just so calm, so stoic about the whole thing, she even lets George go into the till to look at the $20 notes. I mean, George, if he was a really seedy guy, he could have easily just grabbed all the money and ran off. But, she's she probably, because she's seen George so many times in the shop, in the cafe, she knows who he is. So he's like, you know what? I know who you are. You come in here all the time. So, have a look at all my notes.
Yeah. And I mean, George has caused a bit of trouble at Monks from time to time. He's been rude to waitresses. I'm sure he complains a lot about being overcharged, or, he's probably got a reputation for leaving small tips. So, even though they've never had on screen any direct interaction, she would not only recognize him, just, I've seen his face. She would know a bit about who he is. She would, she would understand his character. And I think she knows that he's petty. And that's why she's just so calm and indifferent about his rantings about the $20 bill. Because one, she knows she's right. And two, she's just like, well, I know who you are. I don't really care.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you've come here so many times. I've seen you at least, 100 times in the whole series of the show. Well, that's not what she'd say, but what we think. And she's probably like, I've seen you. You're a regular. You're a daily customer. It's fine. You can come and raid the till if you have to.
Yeah, and in a way, she's probably on some level enjoying the misfortune that George experiences in this episode because, again, George, we see him, and it probably happens a lot more off screen. He sort of doesn't treat the hospitality staff very well. He doesn't tip them very well. He's a bit of a troublemaker. He's a bit of a whinger. He causes a lot of shit around Monks. And when she sees him, go through a bit of misfortune, she's probably like, you know what? I've seen you do so many, not horrible, but just kind of
questionable things
to people. this is kind of just, she probably is just relishing the karmic retribution.
Yeah, she's relishing it. And even like you can hear it in her voice when the LeBaron, George's LeBaron from many episodes catches on fire and it's useless. It's basically written off. You see Ruthie pull up, because George goes up to the car and says, "Hey, I'm trying to get in here," when he's trying to, warm up the car. And it's Ruthie. And then Ruthie says, "Your car's on fire." But she doesn't seem like concerned for George, the fact that his car's on fire. She's just like, "Oh, your car's on fire." And then he's trying to put out the fire and then she goes, "Merry Christmas," and just drives off.
Yeah, which is a bit of a dig, bit of
it is.
Merry Christmas while you're trying to put your car out.
Yeah, I know. So she knows what he's like.
Yeah, and I think I'm assuming that she's probably worked in hospitality or some sort of service industry probably most of her life, at least a big chunk of her life, and she's probably dealt with so many difficult, weird, rude customers that nothing really phases her anymore. She's just she's seen it all. So George is just another random, freak who is just, whatever, like he just 1 over a million.
Mm-hmm. I feel like she's probably really observant for all the customers, especially the regulars. Like with George and Jerry and all that, she knows what they're like, what they do, what they order, because she sees the bills and stuff, and she knows what makes them tick.
Yeah, and like I said, she's probably enjoying on some level, the misfortune of George in this episode. That's why she's like, Merry Christmas. So. It's kind of like a
yeah, pretty much like a fuck you, yeah. Merry Christmas.
That's actually, I think that's only the second mention or the only other reference other than when Kramer says, this is what the holidays are about. 3 buddies sitting around chewing gum. It's really the only mention of Christmas other than Kramer mentioning the holidays.
Yeah, but you do see the Christmas decorations at Monks and everything. But yeah, you don't really hear them talk about Christmas much.
Yeah, they don't really mention it. It's kind of like a subtle background thing.
Yeah, it's not really in your face like others.
No. Do you have anything else about Ruth?
No, but Ruthie, no, but I'm really glad we talked about her for the first time in nearly 4 years. We've actually done a bit of an analysis on her because, I found it really hard to talk about her in her own standalone episode because she's been in so many, but she doesn't do much. She's just the cashier. But no, in this one, she really shines, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact they gave Ruthie a go. She was probably confident. They probably went up to her and they were asking, "Oh, are you confident to, do a couple of scenes, speaking lines?" And she's probably like, "Yeah, I'll give it a go. Why not?" And she did pretty well.
Yeah, no, she did. Considering she's not an actress at all and that she was very nervous, she did very, very well. And another bit of trivia I didn't mention at the top of the episode I thought was really sweet was that I don't know where her family are from, but she actually flew her family out because, she was doing a bit more of a serious role in Seinfeld. So she flew them all out to sort of, so they could watch her, which I thought was just really, really sweet.
That's really sweet, yeah. And she passed away in California too, so she must have spent the rest of her life there.
Yeah. Obviously, Hollywood's got a big extra scene, so she was, she was amongst it.
But what a gig she got. Jeez, 101 episodes of probably the greatest comedy of all time.
Indeed. All right, let's talk about Jeffrey Haarwood.
Jeffrey Haarwood. He's played by British actor Eric Christmas. He's known mostly for his theatre work. He's performed in productions of Shakespeare and Noel Coward productions. For film, he was in the films Porky's, The Andromeda Strain and Mouse Hunt. He passed away in the year 2000 in California in Camarillo. He was aged 84. I feel like with Mr. Haarwood, he's very talented at what he does, wardrobe design, but I feel like he never quite landed that big head wardrobe role because his biggest credit, according to Kramer, was being an assistant wardrobe for Spartacus, which was still a much acclaimed Stanley Kubrick film. But I feel like he didn't quite get to that big Oscar-nominated wardrobe role.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, he's obviously involved in the creative process, but he's also sort of more in the administrative or even business side of the industry.
Yeah.
And that's because, again, he's never gotten his break, or maybe he just wasn't talented enough. He's obviously very talented, but maybe he just didn't have that X factor. It reminds me of, my fiance has worked in the music industry for years, and there's tons of people who work on the business side of the industry who are very talented musicians, but they just have never gotten their break, or, they've always sort of like they've been on the cusp a few times, but they've never like fully, gotten big or blown up. So they accept a role on the business side where they can still be involved, but they're not sort of at the forefront creatively. So it kind of reminded me of that a bit where his creative itch still gets scratched, but he's just never, like you said, never landed that huge, career making and reputation defining role or project.
And that's with many creative outlets as well. Like you mentioned, like with music and stuff, you might have 5 or 10 successful people in one field creatively, but then you'll have 10,000 others with just as much talent, but they don't quite have, like you said, the X factor to go all the way.
Yeah. And even if they do have the X factor, not everyone can succeed. there's only so many places at the top of every creative industry, and you've got so many people trying to get there, all who are probably worthy in their own right. But, there's luck, there's who there's connections, there's fortune. There's so many different factors that go into it. But he doesn't seem bitter. I think maybe when he was younger, maybe he resented always being looked over or passed over. But at this stage, I think he's happy with just more sort of administrative kind of background role where he's still in the industry, but he's not, a leader.
Yeah, he seems very content to be behind the scenes.
Yeah, he seems very comfortable. He's obviously very proud. I can't remember the name of the organization. He just calls it the institution, I should say.
And then Kramer gives it the acronym, the weird, strange acronym. I forgot what it was.
Yeah. He's like, we prefer to call it the institution.
The institution. On a side note, I love when George says when he's got the suit to Deena, the Henry VIII suit, he goes, "I got it from the institution." Sounds like he got it from the mental institution. I love that. That's a great line.
It's a good setup.
Yeah, for sure. Just a side note on that. So, yeah.
I noticed that as well. I thought that was really clever. Yeah, no, he seems to be very satisfied with his, his role in the sort of creative theatre industry, and he still has a lot of influence and he still has a lot of respect because he's running, a pretty important organisation for the preservation of costumes and theatre props and stuff. So, yeah, I think he's okay.
I think he's all right, yeah.
And he obviously really likes buttons.
He does, especially ivory buttons, antique ivory. And I appreciate how he's a very kind and generous man, because even Elaine, goes up to him in the end credits or the credits scene and says, "That's my button." And I've been looking for that. You think that maybe Mr. Haarwood would have an argument and then Elaine might fight him, or, there'd be a bit of a confrontation or it'll escalate. But Mr. Haarwood just gives her the button.
Yeah, no, I think if it was any other character, maybe if it was an American guy, I don't want to be anti-American, but in terms of Seinfeld writing, I think the fact that he's like this small, charming, gentle British man, it would be hard to make him just all of a sudden mean over a button or really jealous. Whereas if he was maybe a different person, he would have become a bit more possessive or accused Elaine of trying to steal his button or whatever.
Yeah, because the joke in the scene was more, to Kramer and Lloyd to make it look like that Elaine's very flirtatious.
Yeah.
To anyone, even like older men.
Yeah, and Lloyd actually says, we got to get that Elena boyfriend.
He'll tell me about it. Yeah, for sure. So
no, I really like Jeffrey Haarwood. He's just like I reckon he'd be the sort of person you could sit down and he'd tell you like all sorts of amazing tales about, the craziness and the divas and all the opulence and the craziness of showbiz.
Yeah, he'd have it all. And he's really humble with what he's done. And he's probably, he was probably, like you mentioned, really jealous in his younger years for not landing that big role, that big wardrobe role. But he's probably, very content and he'd rather be behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think it's just, his bitterness slowly melted away and he just accepted his lot and, he can still do a lot. He still has a lot of respect.
He does. Do you have any other notes on him?
No, that was it.
Cool. I only have some notes just on Pop Lazarri, so Deanne's father. Deena's father, I should say. Do you have any notes on other characters?
No.
Cool. All right, we'll quickly talk about Pop, played by Sandy Ward. He's known for The Perfect Storm, Under Siege, and Cujo. He's appeared in those films. He passed away in 2005 in Orange County, California. He was also aged 78 like Ruth Cohen was. So Pop Lazarri, yes, had a nervous breakdown and his daughter Deena is looking after him. I feel like, because he used to own an auto shop, I feel like he probably lost a lot of money financially. I'm going to hypothesize here that he's one of those poor, like mum and pop business owners who probably fell victim to like big corporations, like big retail chains. I feel like maybe like a big, I don't know what companies they are in America, but like, like in Australia, we got like Super Cheap Auto, Repco, like they're like car stores, like auto stores, and they sell like parts for like cars and accessories and that sort of thing. I feel like maybe something like that opened up near him and they offered like a wider range with cheaper prices. And then after several years, of his loyal customers going to him for, servicing and parts and stuff and other accessories for cars, people probably went there because it was much cheaper and he fell victim to the modern capitalism.
Yeah, no, I would agree that I was trying to think, why did he have a mental breakdown? And really the only clue you get is that he owned the auto shop. So I just made that association as well, where his business failed for whatever reason. I like your idea that a much more a larger competitor, set up shop near him and drove the little guy out of business. And that was just too much for him, and he sort of lost his marbles.
Yeah, I feel like that's what it was. But again, I don't know any American. I'm sure there's plenty of American auto stores. But if you're an American, just think of an auto store. And let's assume that one of those opened up nearby.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so had a nervous breakdown, and probably he might even have early onset Alzheimer's as well, because he's trying to tinker with the car. But George is talking to Deena, and Deena says he hasn't had the shop in a couple of years. But you see him like bashing the engine with a spanner. So I feel like he probably thinks he remembers what to do with cars. But if you've been out of the game for like 2 years, you'd still remember, like, you'd know what parts are what. So he might even have something more complicated than just having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, or maybe his Alzheimer's or cognitive decline makes him think that his car's his, that George's car's his.
Yep.
Bash it, and if it fucks up, well, it's my car, so it doesn't matter. Gets that he's bashing someone else's car.
Someone else's car, yeah, and that's the end of the Lord Baron in that episode.
Yeah. John Boyd will be sad. I do like when George, after he visits Deena and Pop, when he's driving, I think probably to go meet Jerry, I guess, and he hears like the weird sound coming from the engine, and he just goes, pop, pop.
Pop, pop. I like how Jason Alexander, you can see him actually laughing. He's got like a smile on his face. When you can see like he's sort of smiling a little bit when he goes, pop, pop.
Yeah. And,
he's probably done like 3 takes, and Jason kept pissing himself laughing doing it. But you can see he's kind of like holding in a smile a little bit when he does it. I like it.
Yeah. Another bit of trivia actually is that that line was ad-libbed. Wasn't in the script.
Yeah, fair enough. Jason probably needed a line, or he wanted one, and he's like, this is it.
Pop, pop,
pop, pop. Yeah, it's like the sound his engine was making. Pop, pop, crack, sizzle. Onomatopoeia.
Onomatopoeia, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Anyway, they're all the characters I have, buddy. Let's take a really quick break, and when we come back, we are going to find out where the gum sits in our overall episodes we have done so far, and we'll find out if any of today's secondary characters make our top 20 as we celebrate Festivus at the end of 2020.
Great movie, huh? Yeah. Sorry you forgot those glasses.
I don't know what I was thinking.
How'd you like that gum?
He loved it.
Hey, Kramer, you know what? There isn't a light there in the ladies'
Yeah, it's being repaired. You all right?
I sat too close to the screen. I just got to stretch out in a hot bath.
Ivan, where does the gum appear in your list of episodes we've done so far?
Number 56 out of 155 that we have done. So yeah, I enjoyed this episode. It was fun. I did like the secondary characters. I did like Lloyd. I do have a bit of a soft spot for Lloyd Braun, probably because we've interviewed Matt McCoy and he was a really cool guy. Yeah, I just really like Lloyd Braun. I think it's great how they brought him back. He was in the non-fat yogurt. He was just such a successful guy and he had lots of things going for him. But then you see he just falls and his whole career, his personal life, everything just goes by the wayside. And I appreciate how they brought him back. And I like the George subplot as well with his car and with Deena and stuff. And I love how George isn't insane, but to Deena, he's losing his mind. And, no matter what George does, he can't prove to Deena that he's just a victim of circumstance. So I do appreciate it. I feel like the Elaine subplot, because I find in a lot of later episodes of Seinfeld, it was a lot of Elaine's subplots were more focused on her, like being a woman, like with her wet t-shirts, and people would do like a couple episodes we did previously where, it's about the cat fight, she argues with someone and they go, like real outdated kind of subplots. Because she's a woman. I feel like it's probably one of those dated ones as well with like a wet t-shirt and, her blouse, unbuttoned and stuff. Probably stuff that probably wouldn't really fly today. I felt like that was a bit weak. But overall, I really enjoyed the episode. What about you?
For me, it was number 37. So
pretty good ranking.
Yeah, no, I really like this episode. I love how I really admire the writing where everything that is just happening throughout the episode as a secondary sort of consequence makes George look more insane.
Yeah, I think it's really clever too. Yep.
Yeah. And, I always appreciate an episode. I'm usually a big fan of the really simple sort of season 2 and 3 episodes, but I do also at the same time enjoy a really complex episode where there's 4 sort of moving storylines and they kind of coalesce at the end. I thought they did that really well in this episode. And it's just a fantastic episode. Kramer's on fire in this episode. I love him being the theater. This
is a family theater.
Yeah. Him sort of inhabiting that kind of like, old-fashioned sort of character is always something I enjoy. Dr. Van Nostrand, H.E. Pennypacker, these kind of like kooky old-school guys. This theatre guy, it wasn't like a made-up character, but the way he was acting and the way he was talking kind of reminded me of that, and I'm always a massive fan of that. Lloyd Braun was awesome. Jerry's glasses, fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Iconic. Yep.
Really good physical comedy there. Yeah, and Ruthie, finally getting a speaking role was a nice little bonus too.
Yeah, it's good that they brought her in.
For sure. Any of the secondaries appear in your top 20?
No, but special mention to Lloyd and Ruthie. What about you?
Yeah, same. None appear in my top 20, but was happy to see Lloyd and also, Ruthie get a bit of a speaking role.
Indeed. But anyway, that was another episode of Binwabask, and it's our final episode for the year 2020. And my God, Stephen, for everyone, it has been a terrible year, and I'm kind of glad to see the back end of this year, considering, we've still been able to do the podcast remotely, and then, recently you've come back and we've recorded, in the studio, but with the exception of this week, besides all the bad stuff that's happened, I'm glad we've kept the podcast going for the year.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. It's been one of the few things that have sort of kept me and you and, probably hopefully other people as well who listen, sane in some way. So, if you have been listening, if you have given us feedback, if you've gotten in touch, even if you've just enjoyed our episodes but haven't contacted us, thank you. We have been doing this for nearly 4 years and it's still as fun as ever. And we only do it because we enjoy doing it. And, if you enjoy what we do, that's a bonus. So happy Festivus.
Yep, happy Festivus. And let us know what you're doing for Festivus or your Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating. binwabaskpodcast@gmail.com, and also on social media at BIDWBASC. You can support us financially on PayPal for one-off payments and Patreon for a very low monthly subscription where you get bonus content and this episode earlier than everyone else. And big thanks to our current Patreon subs, which I forgot to mention at the start of the episode, Holly, Nikia, Jeff, Dan, and Neil. Thank you very much for your patronage, and you get all that bonus stuff. And echoing what you said, Steve, it's been fantastic, like getting emails from our fans for the last year. And I know it's been really hard, and he's hoping that 2021 is much better. And hopefully we can move on from this once things get sorted, and we can enjoy the last few months of this podcast.
Yeah, and if the first bit of 2021 isn't much better than this whole year, we'll keep doing it, and we'll still enjoy doing it. So that's not going to change. So again, happy Festivus. Hopefully you win your feats of strength. Hopefully you get to air many a grievance, and hopefully you acquire a really, really spectacular aluminium pole and stick it up in the middle of your family room.
I hope so too, and air those grievances and fight your father or your significant other or relative, whichever is best for you. But next week, Steve, we are doing a bonus episode because so many actors and actresses from Seinfeld have passed away in the last 12 months. We felt like maybe we should do like a special in memoriam episode. So we should go look back and see who passed away in 2020 who was on the show, and we can talk about their career a little bit, and we can reminisce about their character that they played.
Yeah, speaking of 2020 being a pile of shit, next week's episode will only prove that. But it will be nice to talk about all the unfortunate passings of Seinfeld alumni through the year, and honor them as fans of the show and fans of their work as well.
Yeah, we can celebrate their work and what they've done.
Exactly. Until then, I'm Stephen.
I'm Ivan.
And we'll catch you all in 2021 and next week for our special In Memoriam episode. Take care.
Indeed. Take care. See you in the new year. All the best.